Okay.
You're gonna start your music and then I'll let him in, or are you gonna?
Go ahead and let him in and I'll say something and then I'll start it. Mm. Welcome, everyone. Mm. Mm. Hi. We're going to put some questions in the chat and some information, and I'm going to just play some music just to help us land. And it's an invitation to put um, your name in the chat as well as where you're calling in from and something you're feeling grateful for in this moment. So if you can type, great. If not, there'll be a chance to unmute yourself if you need. Just get settled in. Hmm. You were calling in from all over the place. That's wonderful. The Northeast, here in the Southeast, over in the Rockies, up north. Wow. I'm grateful to be with y'all today. Just hearing some of these gratitudes, gratitude for change and opportunities to learn for this workshop. Community, technology, able to cook at the same time. Wonderful. The season of release and discernment and all the teachers in life, and the changing of the seasons. Hmm. For sunshine and freedom, association. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I just want to acknowledge there's so many gratitudes that aren't being named now that are the source of our lives. And just blessed be to that reality too. Um, as the message said, we're recording today, so you'll have this recording for you afterwards as well. And there's also a lot of people who registered for this workshop and aren't able to attend live with us, so they'll also be getting the recording. And with that, I kind of want to jump in and yeah, give a warm welcome to not only you, but all the people who made it possible for you to be here today, and to all those folks that are listening in and not able to be live. Welcome to you too, whenever you are listening. And yeah, I want to bring our hearts and minds together just with some prayerful words, or what I call prayer. So a blessing, an invocation. So if you're comfortable closing your eyes, I welcome you to do that. Just turn your gaze inward, whatever's comfortable for you. And with this candle with me that's begun this ritual that we're in, I just want to bring our hearts and minds together with some words of praise and acknowledgement to the holy mystery or source or God or whatever it is that you call that thing, that power bigger than oneself, that's within me, that's within you, that's within all of our relations all around us. I want to give praise and acknowledgement also to my own ancestors and to the ancestors of each of you on this call, for whom we would not be here without. And to those spirits, those ancestors that are coming in and out during this call to support the highest and good, the highest good for all of us in this call today. Thank you. I also want to speak to those who speak through land and that move across landscapes, from the land that I'm calling from today, but also the lands where you all are calling in from. And I want to give praise and acknowledgement also to the wisdom, the collective wisdom that moves through all of us and that we're bringing here today to weave this basket of remembering, of that thing, those ways that we've always never known, that our ancestors have gifted us and that we're choosing to call forth into our memories right now. And I also want to give praise and acknowledgement to the big spirits of weather and to water and to land and to wind and to earth, and just that we've all been dancing with, that we've always been dancing with, all those forces that are older and bigger than us in this moment. And yeah, a prayer for this call to be kind and supportive and connective and nurturing for all of us. So blessed be. May it be so. Amen and Ashe. If your eyes are closed, I welcome them back to take in where we are right now. Just, taking each other. If you're comfortable having your camera on, wonderful. Kind of feels that sense of connectedness. And if that's not right for a fit for you today, no problem. But I just want to give a little introduction before we call each other in together as a group. So I just want to formally welcome you to this introductory session of what I call home funerals, green burials. And yeah, the intention for this space is to connect us with our mortality and the preciousness of life, as well as deepen our literacy and expand our imaginations of what's possible. Um, and just to go through what this will look like in our 3 hours together, I'm going to give a little more introduction. We'll have a chance to do a short meditation to drop in more fully into our bodies. there'll be a chance to say our intentions and our longings of why we're here and what we want to get out of our time together. I'll tell a story of what's happened in that I'm aware of and that I've been connected to here at Earth Haven in this journey of reclaiming and becoming more empowered to tend to our beloved dead, mostly through a photo slideshow. And we'll have a couple of bio breaks throughout our time. So there'll be a chance to get up. And if you need to get up at any time, go ahead to take care of yourself. We'll have time for some closing questions and reflections and discussion time, and then we'll formally close. So that'll take us through a couple arcs. There'll be chances to write down stuff as well as move about and do some solo inquiry. Yeah, great. So just to give a little more introduction to myself, my name is NikiAnne, and I am a community member here at Earth Haven. And I'm here supported by and delightfully with my colleague and friend, Debbie. She's supporting us on tech. Thank you, Debbie. And we both work for the School of Integrated Living, which is through Culture's Edge, a nonprofit here at Earth Haven. And we, yeah, are not only staff with Soil, the School of Integrated Living, we're also members of different neighborhoods here at Earth Haven within the larger village, or yeah, but we call Earth Haven. And yeah, I guess I would also say that I'm an apprentice to life and really working through the portal of death to get in touch with the the fullness of life. Um, I've been one who's been involved in tending the dying and the dead for over a decade here at Earth Haven, and that's been a true honor, and I'm not alone in that service and apprenticeship. And I've also had the honor of tending beloved deads of mine outside of Earth Haven, here in the larger Western North Carolina community and region, as well as my own mother who passed last year. So it's it's with delight and honor to be here with y'all today, just sharing stories. I mean, really, my passion, or one of my biggest passions in life, is empowering people to know their rights around tending to the dead and knowing their options and then eventually their preferences. So I'm really wanting to be of service to each of us, clarifying our own wishes and communicating that with our communities, um, as a way to honor our own lives, but also to take the burden off of our beloveds, who would be tending us in our dying and after death times. And the stories I share today, I just want to acknowledge are coming through my filter. There's no one story. There's many versions of a story. And so this is this version today. Um, yeah, and take what's resonant and serving you. And if something's not resonating or doesn't feel connected for you, then leave it. So just take what works, and apply that in whatever way you want to your life. Yeah, I really want to acknowledge that all beliefs are welcome here, and I'll do my best to acknowledge when I'm speaking a belief through a lens. And I think the last thing I want to do for introduction is just welcome our tears if they come, and just I give thanks in advance for those prayers that are being offered up to the ancestors, is how I think of the tears, as ways to move through in connection in our bodies with the invisible world. So if those come through and are available to you, blessed be, and thanks for doing that, not only for yourself, but on behalf of all of us. And our ancestors who didn't shed the tears that they needed to for all the experiences they had in life that often involved pain and struggle and confusion at times and lostness. So, hmm. Yeah, I guess I also want to speak about the tears of sweetness, the tears of love, the tears of delight, the tears of joy and overwhelm. So, no need to proclaim what the tears mean. Just blessed be to all those watery ones coming from us. Well, I think to ground myself a little more and also to invite all of you to more fully arrive, I'd like to offer a little guided meditation. So, again, if you're willing to close your eyes, feel free. You can just lower your gaze again and invite you to place a hand on your chest, your heart, and your belly. And I've been told that doing this actually allows the vagus nerve to return to rest and digest. So it's calming our nervous system, saying we are safe and present. Just get in touch with your breath in whatever way feels comfortable for you. Maybe it's deepening it, letting out an audible exhale. Maybe just taking notice of it. But with each breath here, I invite you to feel into your aliveness, your gratitude for your life, and your breath being one of those ways in which is indicating you are alive in a body with bones and skin and blood and flesh and memories, primordial memories from our ancestors, as well as memories from our lived experience in this life. Just getting in touch with some slowness, allowing that to be a practice of getting in touch with our mortality, making space for contemplation, attunement, and intuition to move through. It's with our in-breath that we came into this life. And it's with our out-breath that we're going to go out of this life. With those next couple breaths, let that praise and acknowledgement be for your birth and life with that in-breath, and your life that includes your death on your out-breath. Living into soft belly, allowing the belly to soften with each breath. Mm. And remembering throughout our time together that we can move our bodies and we can come back to our breath as a way to attune to oneself while being a part of the whole. And in the words of Mary Oliver, to live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. So with these final collective breaths we're taking, allow movement in any place that needs attention in your body. Just send it gentleness and breath. Oh. When you're ready, feel free to rub your belly and your hand over your heart in circles. Just applying a little gentle pressure, and open your eyes to the world and take in this body of the world, of our circle beyond ourselves that we belong to and are connected to. Mm. Mm. So we're going to talk about these things that are pretty hush-hushed and taboo and swept into the corners in a lot of our social groups and societies. And we're going to center them today. And I just want to acknowledge that we may all be in different places with that relationship with the conversation. Because it's not just words. It's things we're going to speak about. It's words that are reflective of our deepest longings, our deepest fears, traumas, beautiful experiences. So may it be that the emotions come through as we are giving voice to our experiences. And with no expectation that any of us need to be in the same place as another, because that's just quite impossible, particularly given all the tributaries we're coming in with this topic. So thanks for showing up for it. Um, we're gonna break into, you know what? I was gonna break us into groups, but we're actually a small enough group that I'm just gonna allow it to be in the big group, one whole group. So Debbie's gonna put an invitation in the chat, and if you feel called to speak into the group, please unmute yourself to answer the question, what brought you to this workshop today? And what do you hope to um, gain from participating in it? And if you don't feel like bringing your voice out and through your body, you can put it in the chat and I'll read it. So feel free to just unmute yourself if you feel called. Um, we'll just get to know our intentions and our longings together. Anyone feeling called to start?
I feel called.
Great. And if you could speak your
Thank
name
you.
too, that'd be nice to
Thank
get
you,
to
Nikki. My name is Zaida or Satva. I'm speaking from an Anica village in Brazil called Flor das Águas.
know.
And I have been receiving the emails from Earthhaven for a while. Never had a chance to know personally, but feel very connected. And this is a topic that has been calling me for years about more honorable burials and more related to the earth. And recently I saw the message on your newsletter, and it really called my attention as I'm part of one of the elders of the community, and we have never had anyone that died in the community and was buried in the community. So my intention is to also learn how you do this, or what are the suggestions, or I know the impact may be very
Yeah.
positive, I imagine, but there is some practical issues also. I'm not sure about legal issues related to that, if this topic is going to come, but this is also something that caught my attention. But most of all is treating the body with honor. And I do not agree with what is done in regular burials. So, and I was very inspired after Joanna May's passage and I saw her burial. So anyways, thank you so much. Sorry
Yeah,
for
thank you. Thank you,
the
Zaida.
long sharing.
Mm-hmm.
This is Gail. I'm here in West Asheville and have had several experiences with green burial. I've been a part of a community that's located in another county east of here, Surrey County, and where our community is 55 years old. It land based, but most of us do not live there.
Mm-hmm.
Very small membership, just a little over 20. We've had one green burial there in which I participated happily. I'm interested in having a green burial.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and in discussion with my children just recently, because I just had my knee replaced. And so this subject came up. Um, I realized that we've got work to do, so to speak. In other words, um, I need, I got a reality check
Mm-hmm.
in those conversations. Plus, I got to be there for Chuck Marsh's burial. I was mostly associated with Earth Haven, like more like 20 years ago, rather than in recent
Mm-hmm.
years so much. So uh, those several experiences, plus uh, my son's father-in-law was buried at the community sanctuary. I've forgotten its name. That's close to it, in Mills River here,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a wonderful green burial experience for all of us. So those are the experiences that I'm coming with, and my desire really is to try to support, you know, went my way through this with my family, but also to support green burial in my community in Surrey County, because most people, I guess everybody but me at this point, is planning on um, whatever that word is, having their body burned. That word?
Cremation.
Thank you
Mm-hmm.
very much. Cremation. So that's kind of where I am, and that's why I'm here.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gail.
Mhm.
Summer, I saw you unmute yourself. Yeah. Yeah. You can just speak to what you're wanting to gain and the heart of the matter of what you came here for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I attended the Death and Dying gathering with NikiAnne, and the Green Burial has been on my mind for a few years, and I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to getting more details and information. And I too want to support and be part of giving back to the mother and honoring and be more of a sacred journey.
Mm.
So I'm hoping to gain more information and connecting with people of that like-minded as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Summer.
My name is Nan. Hi, everyone.
I
Thanks,
know.
NikiAnne, for hosting this. I am here because about maybe over 10 years ago now, I got to be with one of my closest friends as she died in her home. And it was, I mean, obviously I would rather she still be alive. And her death drastically changed the course of my life. It was such a powerful experience to get to tend to her and to her family. And I have been sort of dancing around death work for since then and have been involved in crisis work. But I feel very called lately to learn more practical skills.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so I guess that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Nan. Now sharing, hearing, there's a craving to hear other people's stories about tending to beloved dead and learn more about rituals that feel soulful and deep. Thanks, Nell. Yeah, Mary Lou?
Yeah, I'm over here in near Common Ground, associated with Common Ground, and I did the experience week over there
Mhm.
a couple years ago, and experienced going to the cemetery and learning a little bit about it, but that's been my only experience. So
Mhm.
I'm just here to learn about it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Glad to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Thank you, Natalie, for sharing your interest in learning what the options are in the laws around home funerals and green burials, how to go about them. Feels more natural and gentle approach. And yeah, that you want your own body to return to the earth and nourish the earth. And you'd love to know how to share that knowledge with others as well. Maybe even assist in one day. Yeah, I hope you do too. Thank you. Any final shares? No pressure, just, yeah. Larry, is that your thumb that saying
Yeah, I don't
yes?
know if you, yeah, I'm on phone. I don't know if you can see my hand up
I
there.
can, go
Um,
ahead.
I'm Larry Wayne. I am uh, not far from Earth Haven. I'm at Black Mountain, North Carolina, in the mountains, enjoying the beautiful outdoors today. And I lived at Earth Haven for about 3 years, and just before Helene hit here, I moved just a half mile away. So I'm a neighbor and friend of Earth Haven. And actually, my interest with um, green burial began about 10 years ago when I actually dreamt of doing that. And I've lived all my life in West Virginia, and that was kind of a very foreign concept there. And so I didn't think much about it until I got down here. And then more recently, I experienced a green burial from a dear beloved one of ours at Earth Haven, and and that was very moving, very powerful experience. I was impacted a lot by that. And then more recently, attended NikiAnne's course session, whatever, on preparing for end of life, doing 5 wishes and that sort of thing. And again, very moving and impactful, and uh, began. I continued the process that I began earlier, and so just real glad to, you know, hear more and learn more about how to do this. So grateful to be here.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, me too.
I'll chime in quick. Tamara Fennell calling from Colorado. My mother's twin brother was a funeral director, and the three of us, my two younger sisters and I, kind of grew up around that business. So I have a good foundation of, traditional kind of burials, and am looking for something different for myself, having been present for a lot of friends and relatives when they've transitioned, some in their homes and some not. So just looking for information and logistics and legalities and options on alternative ways to make my body part of the earth when it's my time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tamara. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you. I am hearing some commonalities amongst your shares. One is like the nuts and bolts, the practicalities. Yeah, the like brass tacks, what's legal, what's not. Um, so honoring that lens, also honoring the parts that I was hearing that are around values and like desires for having this last act, this our post-mortem situation that has a body as as the leftover like the thing that remains when our soul or spirit leaves, and like what to do in that circumstance, and how to have our remains feed life. Also hearing like contemplations of like how to support others, and yeah, I heard soulful, aligned, heart connected. So just like the spirit of this deathing chapter to be connective and reflective of how a lot of us are living our lives and just like having that alignment versus incongruence. Yeah, so that's exciting. And I'm hearing, yeah, some people coming with a lot of experience already in the different ways and like how to integrate the experiences that you've had with what's possible and the experiences that you may have or would like to have be shaped. So that's perfect because that's how I feel we're here today too. And there's going to be a blend of coming in from different tributaries. Is kind of the language I use, different inroads. Some of us are going to be coming from this spiritual, emotional, like relational lens, and some are really going to come from that like document, directive, preparedness in the written form. And they're all essential. And, ideally, all of us have a chance to like go through those layers in the timing that works for us. And what I find is that conversations, like just taking time to have conversations and be talking about the topic that we're here for. This conversation is actually an example, a practice of that, which is deepening us in a relational way. Because even though we ourselves like have to take, no one can take responsibility for our own preparedness, like our own life preparedness. And yet we can't do it alone. It's like we are not the ones putting our bodies in the ground. We're not the ones doing the cremation. We're not the ones holding services after our own death. It's others. And so how can we have a reciprocal relationship that's honoring of capacity as well as values? So yeah, I think I'll say for me, the journey has like the language I would use is like it's like befriending death. It's approaching it consciously, like head on as best I can, and with those around me doing similar orientation. And in that, for me, there's been a lot of a forgiveness practice involved, like forgiving myself and others for doing death and burials and funerals in ways that might not be what I would choose now. And that's just what was at the time. And so how to not have like shame and blame and judgment surface when more options become on the table, like I just want to like put a caution out for that because that's not serving any of us. It's like everyone's doing the best they can with what they had in the given moment. So, um, yeah. And, I titled this class Home Funerals and Green Burials because in my experience and in the Earth Haven experience, a lot of times they've gone together, but they're not inherently connected. I just want to name that some people, like we have the option to have funerals in a funeral home or in a church, and it's not at home. And sometimes there's funeral at home and a cremation happens, or like it's not a green burial, it's some other kind of burial. So they can be mixed and matched. And so I'll just say that I think the theme of what's happened here has mostly been home funerals, and what I would call quote unquote green burials. I just want to say quote unquote because it's all on a spectrum. Just like green building or natural building or conventional building, it's like, well, where's the line in it? So, yeah, and the point being, to use the word home and green, is to distinguish from what colloquially we now call traditional industry burials and a funeral home. It's like the reverse words, which is kind of funny, but a funeral home is actually that sanctioned legal place that can host funerals outside of the home. Whereas a home funeral is the thing that families and communities can do that doesn't require an institution or a legal organization. And yeah, I mean, I'll also tell parts of our stories that didn't have a home funeral, but the remains are on the land, or we had a home funeral, meaning a funeral memorial service here at Earth Haven, and then the person's wishes had their body go elsewhere. So, yeah, and sometimes it's called natural death care, natural burial. I mean, there's conservation burial grounds, which is a legal term to say that that piece of land has X, Y, or Z parameters, or stipulations they have to abide by to have that designation legally. But the main distinction that I want to make, just reiterate, I kind of just painted a picture of, is we as humans, we as citizens of our communities and members of our families have the right to bury our dead. We have the right to tend to our dead at home. And it's not what's advertised, and it's not what's often encouraged by the industries, the medical industry, the funeral industry. And that wasn't always the case. I mean, even the term parlor in our homes, like that was a room in people's homes, for centuries past, because it was for the funeral. It was the funeral parlor or the card parlor. It was this multi-use space that tended to play as well as ceremonies and commemorations. And so really with the change in medicine and the medical industry, it changed this relationship with families and communities tending to their dying and their sick and their dead in regional village scale ways. So I'm told, and there's a lot of research online on the history of funerals and burials in the US. But as I understand it, when medicine was becoming a study in universities, and there was medical schools, that the medical students had to bring their own cadavers. And so, well, where do you find a body? Well, if you don't have access to one, you go to cemeteries and you dig up a body and you bring it. I mean, that's how that term grave diggers came to be, is people were bringing the bodies to go study them and use them, and not really with permission and with protocol. And so some of the practices of burials was influenced by that change in relationship with this need of bodies, of our beloved dead. And so the 6 feet under was something that I've been told is because it was to get the body down low enough that no one could get to it easily overnight. And so, whereas biologically, you don't want a body 6 feet down. It's not where the life lives. It's not in the soil. So that's just one example of something that had an unintended consequence through the growth of within a movement, and in this case, the medical industry. So that leads to then become a funeral industry when people are dying in hospitals, and nuclear family homes and family styles are changing, and then it just kind of snowballed. So it's been less than 100 or about 100 years that we've been living with what most of us consider the normal and traditional situation, whereas tens of thousands of years, the way in which I think you all are showing up for and that these stories are about today is what was normal and commonplace and conventional and the average experience. So in that way, that's why I'm speaking to, it's a returning home. It's a returning back to what lives in our bones and it's been passed through to our ancestors and through our ancestors to us. So I have a lot more to say around some of these technical pieces, but I think I want to come at most of them through the story with the presentation, and then whatever gaps still exist there, may the questions elicit the information. Yeah, I think the other thing I want to just acknowledge is that death is not an emergency, and it's not a medical condition or situation. even though that's the language that is being used as we engage. Oftentimes the modalities or support that we need, or like, when we go to others, there's like becomes this trip hazard of unintentionally redirecting us deeper and deeper in through these gates of permission and authorities. And given that death is not an emergency and we can plan for it. And that's what I feel like you all are doing today, that we're all doing together. Is like, this is the preparedness. It's like showing up one step at a time to befriend it, become intimate with it, become literate. And yeah, I think I didn't say this earlier, but one of the reflections I want to make is that a lot of us are saying yes for myself and yes for other people. And just to say that those are interchangeable. First showed up like, oh, I want to be of service to others. And it was my death care mentor who was like, well, start with yourself. Have you done your directives? And I'm so grateful for that teaching, because it really reinforced a pathway of humility to access the compassion and true like helpfulness in the service. Because how annoying would that be if I was like, this is what I think you should do, and you know this, and I hadn't showed up for the reckoning that is this journey to be with our mortality. And at least for me, it's not an easy place to surrender to, of like, yep, that's going to happen and no big deal. Let's go right now. It's like, I love this life so much. It's like what Mary Oliver was saying in those words. It's like, love what's mortal, and to like hold on to it in your bones and then let go. And so that just like in a nutshell, and that beautiful poem speaks to why I am an apprentice to life through the portal of death, and why I want to support others. And then through all that, through the conversations, through the presence, just the show upness, our questions get bigger and wider and more poignant. Our inquiries about the conversations, or within the conversations, start to inform and clarify our wishes. And so it's really like using the form and a path to get to that formless, to get to that pathless, to get to the surrender. And so that's another teaching that came through in my journey from my teachers, is like, get down to the details so that the details don't matter anymore. So like, to clarify, to then not be attached. And so at least in my own experience, that's what's been happening more and more, is like, my healthcare directives was 10 pages long, and it was like, and not this, and this, and this. And then it's like, 10 years later, it's like 5 pages long. And if I redo it now, like it might be like 3 pages, because I've like distilled like what really is the essence of what matters for me. So I'm hoping that just the visuals and the stories and the questions and stories of you all like help that process of expansion and then distillation. Yeah, I did. I think this thought just came to me. I don't know, many of you have maybe connected with me around the Remembering Retreat, or the recipes for remembering how to belong, which is like a gift that comes through our website. And that a lot of it centers around belonging. And it's such a like fabulous word as like a linguistic handle to get into what seems to me as like the heart of why so many people orient towards community. And death care, in the way we've been doing it, which I would then call community death care, has been such a reveal of belonging. So what I mean by that is like, death and funerals are this amazing, amazing, amazing way. Like, they provide an opportunity to weave oneself into community fabric, to become from a place by participating in the rituals of life. And it's not like a wedding. Funerals are not like weddings where you need an invitation. Funerals is that place in a moment in time that happens all over the world where everyone's basically invited. Like most of the time, a funeral gets announced in a newsletter and it's made public. And I love that Harold and Maude movie because it's like this. It's an example of like, well, I'll say that I hear a lot of people say, I don't know if I should go to this funeral. I didn't know so and so that well. And my answer is like, go. Like the bereaved need to see faces of people who just know that they're not alone, that there's a community and a family in connection through this beloved dead. And it's a way to like have the individual not matter. Like going to a funeral, it's not about the one who's showing up. It's being a part of the whole. And so in a way, it's this like community soup that gets formed, and it's this nourishing broth for the bereaved. And so it's just like an invitation of like, may funerals be a part of a belonging ritual. May it be a practice. And so you'll see in some of these photos, it's like huge funerals, memorials. And I think it's because we're really giving permission of like, allow this to be a space where we're increasing our sense of belonging together because we're connected to this thing that's going to happen to every single one of us. It's the most between, other than birth and death, it is the, like, those are the two universal things we all experience. So, yeah, I think I want to just invite a few minutes for comments or questions, and then we're going to take a bio break before we get into the presentation with the slideshow. So if there's something burning for you, or you just like something pinged, or you touched, or a curiosity emerged, like I welcome it. Just go ahead and unmute yourself. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Last call. Great. Well, like I said, we're gonna drop into the slides. So I'm gonna put on some music and go ahead and get a glass of water, just move around because we're gonna be sitting for 45 minutes or an hour in this slideshow, but about 5 minutes, and we'll come back together. Go enjoy the scenery, breath of fresh air, do what you need, and kind of set your timer if you're not going to be hearing what I'm playing. Hmm. Begin to bring yourself back in to the group. Mm. And it'd be great to have for you to have a notebook, pad of paper, journal, and a pen or something to write stuff down with, or you can jot stuff in the text throughout as well. Just as like we move through things, catch stories, impressions, questions, so that it's easy to remember. Because we're going to go quite a lot of places together. Mm. All right. Well, I'm going to switch this screen share, and then I'll get confirmation that we're looking at the same thing. And I won't be seeing you all for a bit. So Debbie is here for tech stuff. If you get bumped off, just come back on and we'll reconvene as a group after the slideshow's over. All right. Get a thumbs up if you're seeing home funerals and green burials, Earth Haven. Great. All right. Well, yeah, we're gonna go on this journey through these images that just help me tell a story of our relationship with deaths that have come through some of our beloveds here, the lessons learned from those deaths and the dying experiences, and how we, the living, are continuing to walk this path towards death with more preparedness and intentionality. May that be a gift for your lives as well. And I just want to acknowledge my mom. I just want to give thanks for my own life, for which I would not be here without hers. And it was just such a great honor to be able to have transferred all of this learning together we've had here at Earth Haven to my own family life, and to find a way to bring it in a way that matched my family culture that isn't the same as this here that I live in at Earth Haven. So yeah, just sending a prayer out for all those cultural bridges and transfer of knowledge. I just want to like center the question, like, why community or home natural death care? It's like there's so many things we could say, but I just want to like highlight, like, I do believe it's our birthright. And so it's a coming home and honoring that ancestral knowledge that we've been given through the passing of our lines. It opens up discussions in our families about death. So because it is relational and closer to home and not behind a paywall, exported to some facility and other people we don't know, it's brings all kinds of content, practical and spiritual and contemplative. It opens up and helps our grieving process. So the closer we are to the experience and the reality, the more emotions we have available to it. And grief is one of them. And grief is the way to digest. Grieving is the way to digest the love for the thing we lost. And to do that in community in a way that we can have like literally touch and arm's length, the experience has proved so empowering and very powerful. A lot could be argued for it being environmentally friendly. It takes a lot of resources for cremation. Not that that doesn't serve its purpose, and it's perfect for those who choose that. And I would say embalming has a lot of chemicals that are added to a body to preserve it when it's often not needed. So less environmental stress and inputs. It takes place within the community. So I just like that line, like for the people, with the people, by the people. Like that's what this is exemplifies. And it's often in our homes or in our community centers or in, a nearby community building. Yeah, natural death care changes people's views about death. It all of a sudden becomes a more full-bodied experience. It has access to the sweetness and the digestion and the what I call death medicine, that like in touchness with the preciousness of life. The myths gets dispelled. Oh, like it doesn't smell immediately. Oh, it's not actually toxic or dangerous per se. Like, wow, so much demystification happens. And it's a sacred and loving act. Yeah, it's a way to honor the human that we knew in a way that is not only intimate, but honoring of their wishes, and to do it in a loving way with soul and character and flair and personality or whatever fits the situation for that beloved and the family and community tending. And so here are some of the people that are going to help me tell this story who have been the teachers. Just starting from the top left, and we'll go down to the bottom right. I want to acknowledge the four-legged Akuna, Brian Love, Rosetta Neff, Adeha, Kimchi, excuse me, Kimchi, Rowan, Suchi, Caitlin, Patricia, Chuck, Courtney Brooke, and the nameless ones, the unknown ones in our region, some of whom we got to honor through Hurricane Helene. I want to acknowledge Sabamfu Somé, one of my teachers. She's now an ancestor, and she was one of the major influences who helped us as a community know how to grieve together and practice grieving as a community in ritual space. And it was with those practices that we had been doing through her teachings and with her and since her that really gave us the capacity to digest big loss over and over, which we've had, gosh, over a dozen people we've been connected to in the village in just a decade who are now ancestors. I also want to honor our death care mentors. On the right is Caroline Young, and on the left is Ruth Ostranga. And they were in service through the Center for End of Life Transitions, which Caroline is still a steward of. And they are in Asheville, and they've just been in service to the dying and the dead in our local region for decades. And really the grandmothers in the region, I would say. And it's through their Buddhist Sangha. So it's a love offering of theirs. And they not only serve as guides, but also educators. And Caroline on the right also birthed the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary, which is over near the Asheville Airport. And so it was back over a decade ago that we had our first big loss in the community in my generation here at Earth Haven. There were losses before that. But this is of Brian Love, and it ended that he had taken his life, so it was quite sudden. And he wasn't here at Earth Haven at the time, even though he was a community member. And so we had to find ways to digest this big loss without a body, without it being really up front and center in our lives. And so we sat around the fire and we engaged in rituals to help us digest collectively and fully as we could, in that time of collective loss. And I will say that this was an initiation for us into communal loss. You know, many of us lose family members and maybe share some small community around that person. But I personally had never lived in community and had loss. And so to have that be shared amongst each other because we knew the person, um, was huge. And to have it in the cultural fabric to honor in that way was really potent. And so that was true also when Sabonfu died, which that community was global, international. She was from Burkina Faso in West Africa, from the Dagara people. And so this is an ancestor altar at a time of her passing, of a friend who led a group and community to come together and grieve her passing. And so this is just an example of a way to honor our dead. Is, you know, this was an outfit of hers. It was a plate of food. So it's a way in which that maybe many of us see through this time of year, the ancestor feast time of year, the Day of the Dead, Halloween. We kind of see some of these practices come alive at that season, but they can happen at any time when someone passes. And so another big initiation for us was the sudden loss, the tragic loss of a young boy, a son of community members, and he was under 2 years old. And in very short order, we came together to bring his body home because he was being transported to the hospital, and he died en route. And this was our initiation into bringing the body home. So with those death care mentors I was mentioning, Ruth Ostrenga showed up at Mission Hospital with us. And she helped us, taught us, modeled for us, revealed our rights to advocate for taking the body home. And that was very hard. The mortician at the time was very discouraging of that and was with a lot of caution, and I'm sure with good intentions, to really saying that he didn't want us to re-traumatize the family. But it was what the family's wishes were, and so it was granted. And I'm so thankful to have had someone there knowing our rights when we were insecure in them. We didn't know. So we brought this boy's body home, Rowan, and we had a 3-day wake in one of our buildings here, which is a vigil lying in state. You'll see other images of it. And then we put him in the earth. And so this grave was dug and a sweet little box was built for him, which is, you see the coffin right there in front with the flowers on it. And we gathered. And yeah, I think in a lot of ways we're still recovering from that loss, but also with a lot of acknowledgement that that loss created so much community glue at a time that was very, very, very hard for the community. And it bonded us in ways that, yeah, are so unforgettable. The sense of aliveness that came, that was shared amongst us was so palpable and powerful. And this is the compost shrine that lives on our land year round and gets fed ritually and independently at any moment anyone needs to. And I just want to make mention of it because it's an anchor in our community to use at any time. So anytime we've got a grief or a pain that is just feeling like it's not for us to carry anymore, it's to be laid down, we have this portal where it could be laid down and returned to the earth ritualistically. And this also was really important, not just this altar, but any altar for when someone died. I'm going to say, yeah, I guess I will say more about that now, which is a lot of energy comes when someone dies or is dying. And oftentimes we try to bring that energy, all that love, all those shared memories, all of our last words to the dying person, and it's too much. And so we found that erecting altars in other places that's not at the bedside or the feet of the dying person allows us as the living to get our needs met for our care to go someplace, our energy to go someplace, and not ask the dying to hold that. And so that was really critical of a teaching, of a learning that we got in these sequences of death. And so this is a grave site now. This is that hole that was in the ground that you had seen that coffin go into. This is Rowan's grave site of recent. So, you know, it's a living place of remembrance that gets tended through time and evolves. Within a year, we had a community member named Kim Chi, this is her, really reached the end of her time with her journey with cancer. And it was about a year and a half, depending on how you measure time or, you know, the prognosis and the diagnosis. But that she was very clear that she was journeying in a way that was um, with diminishing odds of surviving in the body in this life. And she claimed her death. She's like, all right, I am going to die, and this is how I want to do it. And she dedicated her last chapter of her life to positive deathing. And so she blogged about it. We hosted this potlatch giveaway where she was giving away all of her stuff. And we even had like a raffle with raffle tickets of a kick the bucket day, kick the bucket raffle. Like she was wanting to raise money for the children and for their education. And so she was requesting people to guess her death day. And the person who guessed the death day closest, which obviously they wouldn't have won the prize until after, got one of her most precious items. So she just had humor with it. She played with it. And she practiced honesty. It was not easy in her body, and she named it. She allowed us to be intimate with her physically. She, you know, held counsel, like held court in her house, while she still had energy to. And we had, you know, a rotating schedule of close people. And then the day came where she was no longer alive in her body. And she was such a wild, ecstatic person. You can see how this altar of her, this death altar, where she's lying in state and awake, in which we held vigil for her, that it's quite eccentric. And that reflected her. And she had traveled the world, so a lot of these fabrics of hers got to be with her, just showing the journey of her life. And through the rituals with Sabonfu, the grief rituals, we we got blessed with this technology of anchoring altars. So yes, Kimchi was the altar on the that we just saw, and then to the right and left of her were two other altars, and this is the forgiveness altar. And then on the other side, it's in all red was the ancestor altar. So again, back to that energy needing to move in us. And sometimes it just doesn't move when we're in shock and we're with the dying or the dead. Or like I said, sometimes it can be too much when they are living. And so here are ways to like connect to very common experiences when we're connecting to death or loss or grief. And so the forgiveness altar is one of those. And so Bamfu would always say, start with forgiving yourself, because that's always the hardest. And then that greases the gateways for the others. So this is one constellation of our death care team for Kimchi. The person second from the left is her sister, one of her blood sisters. And so there we were as her end of life care team, transitioning into her death care team, allowing her sister to drive the show. Like we were in service to Kim Chi's wishes, but also her family's wishes. And so it's this beautiful dance of like being of service and guiding when needed, and then also stepping back, attuning, and surrendering to the wishes of those who were most intimate and empowered to make the decisions. And so there's Ruth in the background, our death care mentor. She was still showing up and helping us with some physical deaths early on. And so this is after the 3 days lying in state. We've had the last hour of visitation before this moment was just reserved for the family. And all community members were to give space for that. And then we closed the visitation time, and then we prepared her for the memorial service and for transit. So you can kind of see us like bundling her up with strips of fabric to, have a way to swaddle her with the cloth, the shroud, and then tuck flowers in. And that's been mostly our pattern language. It's not the only way we've done it. And we purchased that carrier. It's called a people mover. They often use them in like EMS and like backcountry survival transport situations, and we, the people, can own them. And so it's been the way we've been able to process on foot in a way that's comfortable for the pallbearers to travel distance. And we often will switch out pallbearers so that people get a chance to hold, but also get a break from holding. So this is us processing to her gravesite, in which was the inaugural burial of our village cemetery, which is on the edge of our domesticated orchard and between our undeveloped area, our more wild area out in Hidden Valley. It's a sloped area, it's terraced, and it has trees and roots to work around. And this was the service taking place right at the burial site, which is not always the case in a lot of services. And we often will have all those present have a chance to offer some earth and flowers into the hole before we actually do the more hands-on, harder labor burial. You can see that you'll kind of see through these photos an evolution of how we've done the excavation of a grave. So right now you're seeing at their feet some roots and some clay soil behind, and you'll see how that evolves in tending later. Kim Chi was wild, and she wanted people to dance on her grave. So there we were, pounding the earth, dancing on her grave, tamping it. And this is before we knew that that wouldn't be such a good thing, that the body wants space for aeration and for micro beneficial organisms to move through. So this was the first and last time we did it like this. And just back to that forgiveness journey of, doing what you can with what you have at the time. And this was the knowledge and inspiration and vision we had in that moment. This is her grave site after all the earth came over, which is usually mounded. I don't know if you can see from that angle. And then through time, as the soil sinks back into the earth, it'll go flat, and then usually then the time for burying something of a perennial can be on it. So this is the next death that happened and just a few months later, and this was Kim Chi's housemate. Her name is Susan. And her dying times and desires for her after death tending were very different from Kim Chi's. Suchi was a Quaker, and she said, "Oh my gosh, all that ruckus that Kim Chi wanted, no thank you. I would like it quiet and simple." And so that's what Suchi got. And she was a very avid peace activist. And so there she is in her peace t-shirt. And this is her body being prepared for transport. And um, you see that dark blue under, that's a wooden board. And that's actually wider than we use now. But we started introducing a board just to have more stability so the body wouldn't have the possibility of being so wavy, head to toe, depending on how the pallbearers were holding. So this is really for the living, like the ease of getting her into the ground and transporting her with more stability. But it's not necessarily it's not essential, let's say. Yeah, and I think I want to mention that I got to be a part of Suchi's end of life care. And one of the joys that I got to experience with her is recording her. She had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and she lost the use of her hands. So she couldn't write anymore, but she could still speak. And so she had letters she wanted to write and conversations she wanted to have. And to call people or talk to them in that moment was too much for her, or she didn't want them to get that message while she was living. And so I just did voice memos and I recorded what she wanted to say. And then after her death, I delivered those audio messages to those beloveds. So that was a really cool, just playfulness, experimentation that she was engaging me or allowing me to participate with her in. It was a rainy day when she was buried, so this is, her draped with a little waterproofed cloth, and the pallbearers coming up, and it was not, most of the community didn't come up for the burial, and I sat at the gravesite awaiting the body to come, and then we began burying. And so, this was a very simple um, presentation. It wasn't incorporated into the memorial service itself. You can see that rock that's right before this plywood that's covering the hole, the grave. That rock was in the hole. And so we did get that one out, but there were others. So this was a situation in which we had to nook her around some rocks. So she wasn't buried totally flat. So back to working with what you got. So this is her just being staged below or above the grave before putting her in. And it was at this point in our journey after those deaths that we were like, wow, we really want to skill up. We want more knowledge, more confidence, more clarity, more sovereignty, more autonomy. And it was such a gift to have this like real life learning through these deaths. But it also was stressful. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so we actually arranged formal study with Caroline and Ruth, and we were hosting classes of theirs out here at Earth Haven through the Center for End of Life Transitions. And there were 3 classes that they hosted. One was a paper class, paperwork for advanced care and after death care directives, which is similar to the class that that Larry was mentioning, and that's coming up this winter. And we did a home funeral and death care midwife training, which is tending to the body and learning how to tend to a body in preparation for a vigil, for a wake, and what our rights are for burial or disposition of body after death. And then we also had a year-long class that we met once a month called Preparing for Your Own Good Life, Death in Life. And it was playful. Oh, there's another photo. I'll speak to it in a second. So these are the directives. 5 wishes is like a healthcare power of attorney, healthcare directive. And then we did dementia directives and cremation directives and declaration regarding disposition of body after death. Those happen to be my directives right there. And so the body care class we did in the council hall. And this is just some images of those moments, practicing playing dead as well as servicing, tending to the dead. with our little death care kit. And so I was speaking about that playfulness. Yeah, and this year long, it was a contemplative class, and it had so much practical information, but it really got us into the sacred inquiry, the questions of the big questions that often we put off. And as we got deeper in, we and got to clarify, we also like the levity would happen, the looseness, the willingness to have humor and playfulness. And so this is the Grim Reaper who showed up, and we all got to, have the Grim Reaper look over our grave, our mock grave, and we had all kinds of things like the Last Supper, our final supper, and just played with it in different ways. And it was at the end of one of those classes, the last day, that we had another community member die. He was journeying with pancreatic cancer for just a few weeks. It was very short, it was stage 4. And Chuck here, he died on the last day of our class. And our death care mentors said, "You got it. Goodbye. We're going home. This is your turn." And they left. And we had to buck up, like, okay, this is it. I think we do got this. And so this is in his home. We actually, when we were in class, there were folks who prepared the vigil space, the space we're looking at. And then us who kind of go by this linguistic handle of death care team, which is really addressing those of us who are tending to the body and the vigil, like came in as a secondary wave. And so just to acknowledge there's so much tending. And so if y'all have capacity for people tending to different areas, it really makes it for a more sustainable situation. And simultaneously, someone's digging a grave right now in this, from the time of this photo. You can just see it's a place to visit, and kids are involved with, and time of, connecting not only around this person, but to our own mortality and each other of the living. And this was the funeral day, and this constellation of community were waiting and waiting and waiting, because we were working with the family and waiting for their readiness to say goodbye to their beloved brother and son. And it took time. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's on their time. It's on the time it takes. And so just giving praise and thanks to the patience and the song singing that brought him here. We brought him in a van. That was actually Debbie's van, because he was a bigger man, and that was too much for us to carry him. And so we brought him in the van, and we greeted these people here, and then we brought him in the council hall. And this is him bundled up, ready to go onto the altar in the council hall, which is the memorial altar. And this is his mother who was visiting him, saying goodbye. And again, just really I want to acknowledge that we've really done our best to center and honor the ways of the blood family, particularly when we, the stewards of the services, are of his chosen family, and just try not for that to be disjointed or competitive, but really harmonizing and supportive. And yeah, there was just readings happening, and kids giving artwork, and love letters being written, and stories. And that's all before we processed out to the gravesite. And again, I really like this photo because it shares so much at once. One, this canopy is up for the living. That's to say, like, wow, it's sunny out or it's rainy out. Hey, elders, we'd like to make a space for you that's comfortable. So we had seats there, and we brought them up in a golf cart, their transportation. And just, trying to make it comfortable, because how we've been doing it just requires time, and it's an anomaly. It's not what people are used to. Concrete, half an hour, 45 minutes in and out. And so just to build a cultural bridge for that not to be difficult or othering. You'll see in the top right is Patricia. She's going to come into the story in just a bit. But she was officiating this funeral. And so we had just gone through Kimchi and Suchi and Chuck, and this is the view of them in recent times. This is our village cemetery. They are buried just above those rocks in a row, and there's a bench you can see there. And so it's just to say that, there's a blend of like tending and also allowing the wild to be a part of it. And so we have seasonal tending that really kind of clears weeds or makes space for the sites themselves to be visible, but we're not trying to make it be completely manicured. So then another elder, Patricia, who was the one I was saying was just officiating, also had cancer, and it was a quicker journey. And I think one of the lessons I got in being with her end of life was she really was ready to die, in her words, as she'd say, like, "I prepared, I've thought about it, I'm fine with death." And then as she was actually in her active dying time, she got really connected with her last project, her like the thing that was unfinished business for her. And that was imparting wisdom and connection and messages to the kids. So she really wanted time for that. And that was the thing that she was really trying to hold on for and deliver on for her, whatever, her soul contract, let's say. And she didn't get to as much as she wanted to because of the pain being so high. So it was this dance between the morphine, which is in the comfort care family through hospice, um, needing to be at high enough dosages that took her lucidity away. It helped her to sleep more and be relaxed. So she couldn't have both. She couldn't be in enough pain to tend to things and also tend to them, have those conversations. So it's really, for me, it like drove home that lesson of like, don't wait for those things that we want to have happen before we die. Or before we're sick, before we have a more compromised situation and might not have all the mobility and capacity. And so after Patricia's death, we had a breather. We were not on the steep curve of apprenticeship to death over and over with beloved dead bodies. And so we had time to just be in our independent study, just be in the contemplative practices on our own time, and also be in conversation in the community. And I will say that when something's not pressing, I find that humans don't show up for it. We go, "Oh, finally, I can rest." So we also, as a community, are culprits of not showing up for getting into the harder conversations that we want to get into collectively because we don't have to right now. And so I just want to acknowledge that that's not gifting us forethought and of conversations that will be harder to have when someone's right in front of us, dead. So this is just also a nod to people tending to death ritualistically through practices, and really just acknowledging that practice is what helps us to know what to do when it counts. That's what these deaths have drove it home to us for. That even with the grief ritual, like we knew just enough what to do because we had been practicing. So just as we are today, practicing showing up for the conversation. Because then some years later, we had another death, a sudden death of a young one, a woman in her 30s, very powerful, active community member in the height of her life, Courtney Brooke. Many of you might know her from the videos on our YouTube channel. She was in a head-on car crash during a storm in January, a winter time. And so it was, this was another layer of deep initiation into a lot of things. One was so grateful for the morgue, grateful for deep refrigeration, because her body went to the hospital, Mission Hospital, because she died in a car on the highway, on the freeway. And she actually died before the huge snowstorm. It was just raining at the time. And so all of the roads were impassable. Her family couldn't come up for days because of how much snow was on the road. We were stuck here at Earth Haven. No one could get out. And so it was, instead of resenting the lack of access to her, we took advantage of the time. So her body was preserved in the cold storage until we could get to her, and it gave us more time to prepare, which was a gift. So we were preparing before her body came, and then once her body did come to us, her family were able to drive up, and we went with her mother and grandmother and aunt to the morgue to retrieve her body, which was our second time of doing that. The first time was Rowan, and this time we knew a little more what to do, and they knew who we were, and they weren't resistant, and it went very gracefully. And so we've been transporting our beloved bodies from town to here, from the hospital when we can, in a minivan. And otherwise, you can also hire services like Chuck, the mortuary. He died in the hospital. So one of the mortuary services, the funeral homes was hireable for transport. Oh, and this was huge. She was so close to so many. So this is in my home and in our basement, which we built as a multi-purpose room for yoga, for blessing ways, for funerals, for dorm rooms, for classes, for meetings. And this felt huge to me to like make available in our community, so that we had multiple gathering spaces for different purposes that weren't all in one space. That's hard to convert to the next thing when you're trying to break down one thing and set up another. So this allows for that pressure relief valve on spaces. And upstairs were these teenagers who were her mentees. Yeah, she was a mentor to many, really in service to young women's rites of passages. And she was just an auntie, like through and through. She is a teacher to me on how to be an auntie in this life. So this is how these girls were processing. They were baking things for the community to eat. And they got to giggle together, and they got to be in their space together and not have all the adults around. So just like honoring all the different ways of processing and how many things there are to do and how many different ways there are to do them, and how much many hands make light work. So eventually, after 3 days, we brought her to the council hall, and this is where she had her memorial service, in which there was a Zoom live streaming of it, because she used to live in Australia and she knew people in India. And so all over the world, people got to experience this. The whole, we probably had 150 people in the council hall, and then however many virtually. Yeah, and I want to acknowledge there's a photo of a man below her head there on the ground. His name's Caleb. Yeah, and he was a first responder, a citizen first responder who stopped with his wife along the road to help her. And he was hit as well. So there was 2 deaths of 2 really big community members. We didn't know him, but he was big in his community. Yeah, and just to acknowledge that just as we got the teachings with grief, like when the gates of grief get opened, they're indiscriminate. And so we're grieving for all the backlog of the ungrieved grievances. We've utilized funerals in a similar way. Like, yes, this is Courtney Brooks' funeral, but wow, like it's still, there's so much space to honor him, Caleb, and also everyone else who has experienced loss and didn't get to grieve it. And that was actually a story of a community member here whose father had died that month. And she felt so alone in that grievance process because no one else knew her father, and her family didn't hold rituals in ways that were felt nourishing enough for her. And so Courtney Brooks' funeral got to be that funeral for her dad, for herself, that she didn't get otherwise. I mentioned it was snowy. It still was by the time we were processing her to the gravesite, which was in the garden of a home she lived in here at Earth Haven. And so we processed with the children leading, and then that's her mother and aunt with the flowers. And this is where we're all processing to. And so you can see an evolution of the graves and the tending. And this is just, anticipating more of the work it takes and what it can look like. So this is what it's like before she is processed here. This is her on that altar, that mound of earth. That's her father to the left in the jacket, awaiting for folks to come. And the two of the men who helped tend to this gravesite in preparation. So, they've got some boards just over the grave just to like indicate like this isn't for any of you. This isn't for any of us. This is just for Courtney Brock. And then we placed two bamboo poles that the boards that her body are on will lay on, and that just creates spaciousness around. So back to that concept that if there's room in the grave for the beneficial microorganisms to come in, then she can decompose faster, which, was in alignment with her wishes of feeding the earth. And that was a really big deal for her family. Like the visual of like getting eaten faster by the earth was not what they were longing for. And yet it was in her wishes. And so they really gave space to honor her wishes. I mentioned earlier, one of the directives is a declaration of disposition of body after death. And in that form, it's to say, I choose so-and-so to be my death care agent. And this is what my wishes are about my body. And that directive says, I'm wanting something different than the legal next of kin hierarchy that the state mandates. And I happen to be named her death care agent, and I worked so intimately with her parents, like really wanting them to be included and lead. And they were so honoring of her directive, saying, they chose you, like, can you help us lead? And so it was just such a beautiful synergy of two families coming together, blood and chosen. And her family today still say that her mother particularly says it's the most beautiful experience she's ever witnessed in her life, and she can't share any more gratitude for what it was like to experience her daughter honored in such a way. So this is her being lowered into the grave. Those boards will stay in the grave. There's little sleeper pieces of wood under those boards going horizontally to those, and that allows for those ropes to be to slide out and not get caught and pinned below. So just little tricks like that we've learned to make it just smoother. And then everyone went through and offered their earth, like you saw earlier. And then they processed back to the council hall where it was warmer and there was food and a big feast. And then those who wanted to bring the earth back over her to cover her what was needed stayed. And so this is a really well documented story of those layers. So you're seeing the subsoil go in first. There you can see there's like cedar boughs over her. And then around her body, they are doing upright, rotten sticks, branches, so that when they decompose, they're little highways, they're tunnels down to the lower parts of the grave, so that there's access for those beneficial microorganisms even into the subsoil. Nothing's being pounded. There's charcoal, which, every handful of charcoal has as much surface area as a football field. There's all these pores throughout. And so those are little like worm microorganism hotels. So just creating so much of like a nutrient base and conditions for life. Carbon, so it'll break down, creates aeration. And then again, those rotten logs that are now going perpendicular, just laid across. More soil. Now you're looking at dark, loamy topsoil with hay, straw over it. Ultimately, we decorated her, and then, the mound just recedes through time. And so in this case, you'll see that there's still a mound of earth nearby. And so that can get added on later if need be, as the soil recedes. And just to transition to our next beloved, I personally just want to take a breath and acknowledge that, whew, yeah, this is a lot of people that we're getting to hear the story of. And yeah, each one's unique. And so this is a story of a woman named Adeha. She was a co-founder of Earth Haven. And she didn't live at Earth Haven for the time I was here, and she was living in Asheville, and she was still close with people at Earth Haven. And she died at Solace, which is a hospice center, like a facility. And we, a couple of us on what we call the Earth Haven Death Care team, came in at the request of her friends, and said, "Can you help us? Can you help tend to Adeha in a way that would honor her life in accordance with her values?" And so we got to be there in this hospice facility soon after she died. I think her friends were with her, and we prepared her body there with her friends and guided them into what we have been taught to do. And we did it at a pace that worked for the facility. They were grateful for us to do it this way. They seemed to be touched. And there was a van that got pulled up to the facility, and we drove her to the the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, CCLD, which is a local organization also devoted to life through death. These are her sweet feet in her lying in state time. And this was before the Center for Conscious Living and Dying was open. They hadn't officially welcomed in and hosted dead themselves, but they granted us permission to have her vigil there. And so this is in their kind of greeting room that we set her up to be received by her beloveds in town before she returned to the earth. And you know, sometimes like you can see we at Earth Haven, we were often doing the altars up against the wall. And here she's in the center of the room and people can sit around her. People, you can use massage tables, you can use coffee tables, different heights. You just need something stable, you know, that people can come up and maybe put an elbow on to grieve and it doesn't compromise, you know, put anyone in danger, the body being rolling off or the someone getting um, something fallen onto them. And yeah, all this honoring just does not have to stop at our humans, or maybe actually the reverse. Like some of us know how to do this because we've had furry ones, our pets crossover. And so, yeah, this is that story of Kuna. And she died at home at her, you know, Earth human mother's house, her home, and a grave was dug. Um, And some visitation happened. So this is her on a coffee table outside before she returned to the earth. And so she's down below in that shroud. And it actually gave a chance for one of our neighbors who had a dog who died, who she had the cremated remains of, um, also return. So that's them pouring in the ashes of a dog named Jasper. And they were buddies, and so they got to be in that grave together. And that just was really cool. Back to like, you know, community death care. And this is like another way to say that. I mean, most people don't think of sharing memorial services or graves together, but there's ways to do it. Yeah. And we are now kind of in the present moment of a recent death of this year. This is with our beloved community member and friend, Caitlin, and you know, just another powerhouse, really big personality and contributor to our village who was connected with many. And she died at the hospital, very sudden onset or discovery of stage 4 cancer. And we got to bring her home. And that was also an initiation. It was the first time that we interfaced with the hospital and having her go straight from the hospital to the morgue. So she didn't have to go to the morgue, but we weren't ready for her. We had to figure out how we were getting her home and have the people who are at home start making preparations. And then it gave her more time for her family to come. And so we picked her up from the morgue later that day. And her body was in a condition that we, as the home funeral guides and death care team, assessed that she probably that it felt risky for us to have her at home for a full 3 days, which in some, you know, some people's beliefs or religious practices is to have the body go into the earth immediately, or whatever's going to happen to it, or not before 72 hours. So anything in between, it's like the timeline. But a body can usually hang out for 3 or 4 days, or at least that's my experience. Is we've done that for up to 72 hours, around there. And with hers, it felt a little risky that her body was seemingly going to be decomposing faster than we were used to tending, and that it was August, so it was hot out, which is just harder to keep her body in a cold state, which we do through dry ice under the body. Yeah, so that was just some logistical details it made it such that her funeral was on Saturday and family got to travel and return home. And I love this photo because it just highlights the intergenerationality. So yeah, the woman in the center, that's her daughter on the right, who was there, just really wanting to be a part of. And a lot of our kids have been a part of each of these deaths and digestion and burials in ways that have worked for them, because it's their aunties and their friends and their uncles. And there's just so much tending, again, back to whether it's, curating the funeral, which is, what Debbie did in this case, processing flowers for the different stages, arranging the pallbearers, cooking food, making funeral feast arrangements, supporting family to arrive and be housed, contacting friends and family from all over the region, who's going to officiate, digging the grave. We personally sit vigil, like have someone in with the beloved dead body the whole time until they return to the earth. So these are decisions we've made, and they so far, and they could change, and it could, it's all kinds of ways, but this is us in process right now. So Caitlin laid in state in the council hall, and that's where the funeral service was. This is after the funeral service, and everyone has exited the room, so the inner outside, about to process. And it made space for the pallbearers to come in and get her off that altar in a way that was graceful. And so, again, it was just a choice point of not everyone has to be there for every moment. So not that we're trying to hide anything, but not everyone's prepared for the practical matters. And so we just make decisions that allow for people to have different experiences, to have an experience that calibrates with their readiness. And so in this case, Caitlin was a larger bodied woman. And so that altar is up against the wall there. And so how do you get back there to lift her off that side? So in that people mover that has those handles on it, I don't know if you can see, but that gentleman on the left has shorts on, and there's a black bar right at his knee. We wove a black metal bar through those hoops so that the people on the end could lift her up and get her onto the ground here. And then they removed the bar, and then when they went outside, they all had the handles again. So again, just adaptation with what needs to be done and what works for your supplies and where you are. And then she was placed in a van, and we processed her. The pallbearers walked in front of the van, and that drove her down to the gravesite with everyone following that van in procession with music. And this gravesite is actually a hearth. It's the center of a gathering space, and it was chosen to be in a location that's going to have a fire over it in perpetuity, or maybe not in perpetuity, but that's how the use of it today. And so again, not everyone's involved in those decisions. It's like doing what we can with what we have, with who's available for those conversations, and then living into the change of the loss of the person, and where we get to honor them through time. You can kind of see the different vegetation through the seasons of what's available. And yeah, I just want to also acknowledge we had this hurricane that happened in 2024, Hurricane Helene, that came through. And although we at Earth Haven had some damage to the land, no, there were no deaths amongst our immediate community. And we're so grateful for that. And yet we live in proximity to a lot of death that, our region, there were a lot of people who were swept by the waters, or died in other ways in the hospital later, or because they didn't have the oxygen or medication they needed. And it was a collective grieving time that was hard to access and hard to know what to do with. And some friends of ours called us together in Swannanoa and asked us to be a part of a ceremony, a ritual that we said was singing the dead home. And so this is a gathering along a river that feeds into the Swannanoa River, which is one of the big rivers that flooded and swelled. And we came together to listen to the stories of those folks who had immediate loss, but also just to sing home and say prayers for all the unnamed, all the forgotten, all the ones who don't have anyone else grieving them or honoring them, their life and their death in any concrete, clear way. And so I just want to, yeah, give thanks for that invitation and for that awareness of what's possible. That's not just what we think of as, the small intentional community, but the larger community we belong to, and the belonging to each other through this death care practice and this home and community-based death care tending. And I just, I didn't feature this in a lot of these photos, but there's just how much aliveness, joy, access to vitality and connection comes through as we've digested each of these deaths properly, that the way through is through. And so this next photo is just maybe speaking to that spirit. This is 5 of us who have been in service to death together quite acutely, and it's really bonded us, and it's given us so much shared purpose. And so here we are at that kind of grave site of the unnamed that we were creating through our altar together. So yeah, just wanting to give invitation for circles of people coming together who weren't necessarily bonded in any way other than the death itself and the glue that can be. I just want to close with this passage of Rainer Maria Rilke. Death is our friend precisely because it brings us into absolute and passionate presence with all that is here, that is natural, that is love. Life always says yes and no simultaneously. Death, I implore you to believe, is the true yea-sayer. It stands before eternity and says only yes. Thank you for journeying through time and stories and connection and relationship and loss with me. I'm going to come back to our screen where we can see each other. Mm. Mm. Nice to see your faces again. Let's just take a moment to pause, and whether that means you want to turn off your camera or just close your eyes or just however it is that you're turning inward, and just see how you're feeling right now. Just check in and just take note. I just want to make a moment to reflect on all that you just witnessed and heard. Feel free to jot down or just take note internally if that's where you want to be. Just like what stood out to you. And are there any questions you have that emerged or any contemplations arising? Yeah, take a moment to jot that down if you feel called, or just sit with that, noticing. And then we'll have a moment to speak to those that want to. Mm. 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 So we're just gonna kind of blend where you are into a little bio break too. So feel free to keep writing as long as you need. And I just want to make space for about 10 minutes for water in, water out, movement, stretch, step outside, take in the season. Just noticing what you're gravitating towards. Yeah, and does anything that you are gravitating towards offer any reflection or insight to you into your values, opinions, preferences, fears? And we'll put that in the chat. So, yeah, if you're on Eastern time, we'll circle back a little before 4:20. So, again, gift yourself your thoughts, your noticings, and we'll come back together. Any questions or inquiries as well? Start to bring ourselves back together. If you can hear me, do bring yourself back, and we're gonna make some space for some shares. So I just want to make space for what's alive for folks. So feel free to unmute yourself. And if it's a question, if it's something that just wants to be spoken, to be witnessed, yeah, we have time. Yeah, Mary Lou.
I was quite amazed at the amount of time and work. This is really my first exposure to the home burial, the preparation and everything. And the comfort and slowness at which there was no, rushing, pushing, which was so well coordinated, as you say, as you went along. But I think I think of how people depend on the funeral director to say in 30 minutes we're going to do this, in 30 minutes we're going to do that, and how there was such trust between through the whole process with the families and the friends and the people there in the community. This is overwhelming. Really, thank you so much, Nikki. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that share.
Yeah.
Others? Yeah, Summer.
Yes, I ditto that as well. And at the same time, it was a beautiful witnessing of the celebration and the honoring, the ceremonies and the rituals. I so appreciated all the varieties that you shared and all the different ways that it could be done and all the dynamics. It was really, really magnificent to witness that and to share that and to hear your narrative about it and all the journeys that you went through as a community to honor the people as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks for letting me tell the story.
Hmm.
Yeah, Zeta.
Yes, and just to complement, because all that is said is already part of what I have to say also, but with the depths and transparency that you shared, allowing yourself to teach and to feel at the same time, that is also part of the teachings as I feel and as I see, because we are being humans and this is very, very important. So I want to acknowledge that as a big teaching also. And I'm gonna use this time to also say that the only thing that I got more curious about is I don't know if I understood well that there is a document that you guys created for preparations. I don't know if this is related to the 5 wishes or if I'm making a mistake, but
No, it's
just
great.
yeah, I just if we could have some kind of references of what goes in these documents, just to say why, like I live in a community that has I'm actually responsible for so many rituals, but nobody has died here in 14 years of existence. And I know that when it happened, then we're going to start thinking of it and I want to do it ahead. So anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm just going to address your question and then there's room for others to share. Yeah, I think you're referring to the Declaration of Disposition of Physical Body After Death. It's a long one. It's not one we created. It's one that was given to us by our mentors and that we've adapted. And I just want to put that in context that the 5 wishes or a healthcare directive lasts until you're dead. It's only while you're alive. And so they're really, I haven't seen explicitly any other document like this that's outside of like other legal documents or just the legal succession, the hierarchy of kin. So like in North Carolina, it's I think your children if they're over 18, and then your parents, and then your no, it's your if you're married, it's your partner, and then your kids, and then your parents, and then your relative cousins or aunts and uncles. And so like that's a pretty common hierarchy. And so this is a tool to say, this is who I choose that interrupts that hierarchy. And so it's a directive that I hold in our death care directives classes, which, there's one that we're going to do online in January and February. That's one of the directives we go over and offer to support getting done. So that's that answer to that question. And so, it's a great one, particularly for us who are living into asking our non-blood family to take responsibility for our matters, if that's a choice that people want to make. Yeah. Others? Yeah, Gail?
Really magnificent. The slideshow and your commentary, really magnificent and beautiful and meaningful, colorful, of course. And I knew 4 of the elders there who passed. So our community is quite, we've been around since 1970. So there's a number of us that are like, I'm 80. Okay. And so there's several of us that are quite elderly. One at least that's in very poor health, and several others that are in not good health. I'm in good health so far. But I had an interesting conversation with my son in which we were talking about this green burial business just a week ago. And he said, Mom, you're asking me to tend to your body after you pass? How am I going to get you to the land? It's 2.5 hours from here. How am I going to get you to the land? In the back of the truck? It was very startling to him because he hadn't really seriously considered it. So I have seriously considered it for a long time and helped with the preparation of the body of one of our members 15 years ago. So I'm very committed to this, but to be attached to it, if my children cannot handle it, that's another matter. And he and I talked about the possibility of involving the community sanctuary. Is that the name of it? The community sanctuary?
Carolina Memorial Sanctuary.
Carolina, thank you. Carolina Memorial, because that's where his father-in-law was buried, a green burial, and it was quite beautiful. So our community has learned, we've got documents, we've learned about green burial, but I really would like to share more with them. And I would request you consider the possibility of coming there to teach us. And we can talk about that and what would be involved with that. I'm also wondering about my getting taught more, because I want to support this process and maybe be a death care giver, even like that. So that's another thing that I'd like to talk with you about, maybe in a phone call or something. How should I best proceed? Should I be going to the Center for Death and Dying, and doing some learning there, or learn from you? Or I really would like to support this more, and knowing full well that other members may decide not to go that route.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that, Gail. I'd like to reflect a couple of things and also answer some questions, because I imagine others might be having some of these questions too. One, I want to celebrate that you've engaged your family on it. Like, that's huge. Like, you just like you cracked it open, and then like it can only, or not only, but it likely will just keep unfolding. So like, hurrah to that. Yeah, and I heard you also, Sarah, share like you're with a lot of people who are in their winter of their life, in your community. And so this is like becoming more front and center. And just thanks for taking those matters seriously. And I didn't make mention of this in the slideshow, but Courtney Brooke, 31 years old, did her death directives and did that 1 year class when she was 29. She was the only one out of all those people that I know of who had everything done when there was not something on the table. So like it just like, yes, like age and illness helps put things into perspective more. And none of us know the moment we're going to die.
Yeah.
So just want to like holding the complexity and the paradox of that and the fact that we can be delusional when we're young and fit. So there's that. Yes, I mean I'm just, and then I'm going back to your son, like, am I gonna put you in a truck? It's like, well, I don't know, let's figure it out. Like it's really like that's where it goes to, is just like practical and like let's think it through. And I mean, I just love that line of like, planning is priceless and plans are worthless. And that connects to that comment I was saying of like using the form to get to the formless and using the details to get to the detachment. And so I'll just kind of reference a couple of things I've put in my directives that made me think of them as you were saying, like, well, how attached am I and how do I honor what the capacity is of the living who are doing it?
Yeah.
So in my directives, I mean, yeah, so whether it's my healthcare directive, I added an addendum to the 5 wishes. It just says on all the notes, on all pages, see addendum, see addendum, see addendum. And then I just said whatever I wanted to say and I didn't fit it into their limited space. So there's that. And then I did the same thing with this declaration of disposition of body after death. And I said, yeah, my first wish is to be buried at Earth Haven. If I'm, that's reasonable. I'm from California, so I said, no, if I die elsewhere, if I die in California, because I do visit there quite often, hey, I'm open to being buried out there if like a place could be found, which would probably be more in the realm of like a Carolina Memorial Sanctuary. It's like it wouldn't be on family land. It'd be like a third party host site. And then I said, if neither of those are reasonable due to the circumstances, then you can cremate me.
Yeah.
So like I just did the sequence of preferences. And then over and over in different ways, I say in my directives, like, thank you so much for hearing that this is what's moving through me or that I'm wanting this in this moment. And I'm trying to be clear to give support and guidance. And if it's not serving or not doable, I I know that I'm asking folks to tend to me who I trust. So do the best you can and know that it's perfect by me.
Yeah.
So like I just say it explicitly. Here's what I want, and like do what you can.
Yeah.
And so yes, I can write that, but I also can say that too. And in the directives class that I hold, and actually all the classes that I hold, we often will use a deck of cards called the Go Wish cards. And each card has a pretty classic end of life wish. I want to be kept clean. I want to have spiritual support. I want to be by my family. I want to be at home. I want music playing. I want spiritual passages to be read. I want to trust my doctor, whatever they are. Each one is one wish on a card. I use those with folks and myself to clarify my wishes and to create conversations. So like one way I've used them is like my husband, who's my death care agent, and healthcare agent. He has that deck of cards. I have that same deck of cards and I sort them. Very important, somewhat important, not important. And then he sorts them according to what he thinks my wishes would be. And then we got something to talk about. So like I just try to enter in playfully about things that come up. Those are the things that come up. it's not going to cover everything. I don't know what the circumstances might be, but it's something. It's better than nothing. And at least it takes the like anxiety of failing someone out of it, you know?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
that's the burden of like they're totally guessing, and I mean if it's siblings and they're both entitled to make decisions, and then it's like you know, then they've got then it like sets people up to have their preference or projection of you in the field, and who knows mom better, or like, you know, so
Yeah,
as much as we can get that out of the way, it just fosters so much space for people being in their where they need to be, where their heart is hurting and they need to have their mind as available as they can for the practical details. And it's so much, it's already exhausting. So why give more mystery
yeah,
and difficulty to the scene if we don't
yeah.
have to? So, and to answer, yes, I'm happy to talk to your community. I'm
Mhm.
happy to be in service to whole groups of people, and also groups like this where it's like you all don't know each other, but you know, like you're all here for the same enough reason. And so absolutely. And you know, it's also doesn't stop at me. I'm just this version of caring, and there's so many resources out there, and just, you know, I'm available if this is the journey you want to take through this flavor. And I'm so grateful that there's so many people making space and holding space. So teach their own.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hmm.
You and I do.
Yeah.
Mm.
Others?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, NikiAnne, I just want to say how grateful I am for you documenting all these past funerals, um, and you know the depth you went in explaining the the green applications and whatnot. Um, I am scheduled to meet with my daughter next week to have this conversation and to share my directives with her. And this is just so helpful, and I just appreciate that.
Mm.
And my mind's already been spoken mostly with what everybody said, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're engaging her. And I'll say, you know, I've engaged my family, some of whom are not ready to talk about it. And you know, is living into that death phobic um, orientation that we're all that we were been conditioned to. And you know, a lot of people can believe if we talk about it, we're calling it in, we're going to make it happen. So that's a taboo. And I just I, I I invite us all to like aikido that, because that's that's a in my mind that's a bypass, and it's so understandable. It's like linked to the fears, like it's linked to the love. Like I don't want to lose you. I don't want to think about losing you. So can we not talk about that? And so I just want to say, like, yeah, be gentle in the conversations. Let it, you know, uh, trust that there likely and hopefully will be many. And so, you know, if each one of us is going at the pace in which we can digest while we're also riding on the edge, you know, because most of it is on the edge. You know, it's not usually a comfort zone, or the comfort zones are compartmentalized. I am fine with death, but prolonged dying, heck no. I know. I I can endure pain, but I have no idea what happens in the afterlife, and that terrifies me. So it's like it's different comfort and fear zones and edges. So just to, yeah, be gentle and kind with yourself and others as you discover where those similarities are as well as differences. Yeah. Yeah. Others.
One thing that I'm taking away, something that you said kind of early on, which is that when someone is in their final dying process, there can be a lot of pressure on them
Mm,
to actually be like supporting the people around them. And I think it's a really interesting line, because because there is so much fear around death. I think sometimes when somebody is dying, the people who are not dying are not totally aware that that person is actually still alive right there, and you can be with them. Yeah, it's a really interesting way to put it, to not put so much pressure on the dying person to have all of the big like emotional stuff right then, and really speaks to the importance of like communicating with each other before it's a crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. And before the tenderness is so acute. Yeah, thanks, Nan. It actually calls me to acknowledge anticipatory grief. It's a stage of grief that I didn't know there was really a term for, actually, that I experienced with my mother's death, because there were stages of a 6 years, 1.5 years, 3 months, 1 month, 1 week. Like it had like its ways in which it narrowed. But so in the kind of 3 month time when it was like just more like, oh, this is actually really real, like probably not healing in the body, in the to curing, probably not going to be cured. And oh my gosh, I mean, as Nan was just with me at a recent grief ritual, yeah, I practice grieving in community, and it's a life way for me. And so I'm pretty intimate and befriended, friendly with grief. And I had never experienced grief like I did with the anticipatory grief of my mom's death. And it was like a tidal wave. And that was when it was biggest, when I really was like, oh, the end is in sight. And then the end and after the end, yes, I've had waves of grief, but it was nothing like that initial wave. So just to say that I just want to acknowledge that yeah, the timeline for when it's the biggest part is, it can differ for folks too. And in connection with that, like the thing you were acknowledging that really spoke to you, of like not putting it on the dying person. Yeah, I just share a little bit about my story with my mom, particularly on that one. She was a nurse for 40 years. She knew how to speak facts and hold it together and be a badass in really difficult situations. And so she acted like a nurse through her dying process. So I was protected in a lot of ways, from the emotional journey of it when I was talking to her, but it also perpetuated my delusion of like, this is normal. It's just going to always be like this. I couldn't, it was when I was talking to my husband, who was like a truth teller, that like I could be like, oh, right, this is this is actually happening. It's so the different ways to orient was shifting how I was orienting. And so, and what I learned is my mom was managing her emotional world through her storytelling to us. And when I could catch it and speak to it, meaning like, Mom, like, let's talk about it. Or how are you feeling? And what I learned is she didn't like being the center of attention, and she didn't want to be fussed over, because the fussed over connects to impotence and pity for her. Like that's what it would direct towards. And so when I attuned to that, when I learned about that and I attuned to it, that was one great for me of like, okay, how, like, I don't need to be some know-it-all death care agent. I'm like her daughter. and like she's the dying one, and I'm like she's still trying to protect me as her daughter. And so anyway, um it was a really good humbling like practice of like attuning to her and honoring myself at the same time. So I I would mostly only go where she had capacity to go when I was with her, because that was in service to her capacity. And like, she's the one to be centered here. Like, she's already managing a lot of details, pain, care of us, like all, whatever her relationship was with God in this. And I leaned on different community for my support. And when I was with her, which I did spend 6 weeks with her while we were getting her into palliative care and hospice, and then this is in California, and then I came back to North Carolina for a couple of weeks, and then back for her 1 week of dying, of active dying. And all to say, in that 6 weeks, like, I'm living with her. I haven't lived with her for 6 weeks since I was 18 years old. Like, big deal. And like, but I got, so a couple of things. One, I went to go visit friends and I'd have to say goodbye every time. Like, I didn't know if I was leaving for a few days, if it'd come back again and she'd be there. And so it would be like this. I would tear up and like, Mom, like, oh, I'm gonna go, but like, see you in a bit, right? And she would be like, oh, stop crying, and I'd say, Mom, and I would just tell her. I didn't put anything on her, really. I don't think. I didn't try to put it on her, but I tried to share my narrative. Mom, my tears are out of love. I'm just sharing I love you with my tears. Like, I'm not scared of them. You don't have to be scared of them. I'm not scared of yours either. And she like, it made space because I wasn't demanding anything of her. I was just sharing what was going on with me. And I just translated it for her. My tears say I love you. And it made space for her tears, because now her tears had a message that she could stand by, which is I love you, versus I'm weak, I'm dying any moment. And so I just like opened up the space little by little, not in theory, but just like with what was coming. Um, anyway, I just wanted to share that piece of like titrating. Like, how do each of us not abandon ourselves, not abandon our values and culture, but center those who, which in this case, and my belief, is the dying in this case. And not that it's the hardest for them, but like, this is their last like chapter. And most of the time the longing is to have us with them. And my mom, she had her barrier, which is like not wanting to be seen um as fragile, even though um she was demonstrating she's like a hero, a Herculean badass woman. um Anyway, there's a lot I could say. There's more teachings in this, but I just wanted to say that much of like how to honor both at the same time. Yeah, honor the complexity. Thanks, Dan. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I see you, Aviana. Thank you too. Mm. Yeah. If there's anyone who hasn't spoken that wants to, um, yeah, there's space. And if it's for someone who's already spoken as well, there's space. Mm. You had named you were like curious about the practical and the details and the legal, and like, is there any questions in that realm that someone has that others might have as well? Mhm. Yeah, Gail.
So is it still legal to transport your loved one in your own
Yes,
vehicle?
it is legal to transport your loved one. You need
That's
to get a
good.
permit if you cross state lines,
Okay.
which is doable.
Okay.
Hmm.
I just wanted to thank you again for your authenticity
Mm,
and your uh, open emotional expression and your level of skill and knowledge. It's enormously helpful. I
Thanks,
thank
Gail.
you.
Yeah, it's become a passion project because I mean, for me, it's like, it's actually not rocket science. There's not like a whole library to learn, but there's something to know. And so it's just like to have learned just enough to be like, oh, it's doable. Like that's what I want to be giving. That's a gift I got and I want to keep giving it to others. Like there's something to know and it's not rocket science. So like let's find our way. And just that I'm really committed to and believe in the potential of beauty and honoring if more and more comes into our citizen hands. And we don't have to take it away from anyone. The whole industry can still exist. We're not like, maybe one day there'll be such a wave of remembering and taking responsibility into our hands that they're really threatened. But right now, like, there's people who aren't looking for this class. They're not looking for this orientation. So status quo can maintain, and then more of us can have more of what we want. And we can already. It's just a matter of knowing what the options are. Yeah. Yeah, and I will, yeah, Zeta, I see you. I just want to say what the options are. Just some really short, quick technical pieces. In the state of North Carolina, so each state has their jurisdictions, their laws, and they're all findable online. There's a book called Final Rights, RIGHTS, that goes state by state. And there's also counties. There's county jurisdictions. So in the state of North Carolina, for example, you just need 18 inches of earth over the top of the body. Okay, doable. In our county, it's usually around water source and how far you are. In our county, it's 50 feet. In a lot of other surrounding counties, it's 100 feet or, maybe up to 500 feet. And then it also, not only from the water source, but also there's other parameters as far as how far upstream from water flow. All of it's find-outable. I actually advocate and encourage each one of us to call the county and ask the questions. If you think I do this often. I have the answer, quote unquote. I think I still have the right answer, but I'm going to call and double check again. So not only is it making me accurate or like keeping my information accurate, it's also advocacy. It's also getting a new government worker who's new to the job or they've been there for 30 years and they've never had this question, and us asking the questions helps them to find the answers and then know themselves and then be a dissemination, like a portal of dissemination in a governmental way. And that's what's happened over and over. I can't tell you how many hospital workers, morgue workers, county officials say, I don't know, I've never had that question. And then they have to go find it. So that's been really cool. Like, yes, we're in it together. Now you know too. So thanks. Yeah, Zeta.
Just your last words reminded me, even though not all of us here are in community, living in an intentional community, but it feels like we all have this sense of wanting to be connected to the earth and to be interconnected with each other and with nature. And we do this all along since we give birth here, we have a birth house and all of this, but we never talk about this last topic, which is dying. This is like, which is, it's a reflection of life that we live as we would never die. So just this came to mind here.
Yeah. You're reminding me, I wanted to say about, I have no idea what it's like in Brazil, but here in North Carolina, and it could be true for all states, I'm not sure. If you bury on private land, that burial information travels with the deed. So when you sell the property, you disclose there's a body here on the spot in this location. So that's just something to know. But and then a lot of city limits you can't bury in. And so like in Asheville, you can't bury in the city limits. Good to know. Okay, what do you do next? Maybe it's the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary. Maybe it's, you know, finding land in the county. Or a lot of traditional burial grounds, cemeteries, have green burial areas. Usually it means that you're out in the woods or over on the edge and that you just don't have to be put in a vault. That the vault makes it so that the earth doesn't sink and they can mow flat. And so that's often why they're advocating, because it's just easy to tend to in perpetuity. And then about not living in an intentional community, like most of the world doesn't live in an intentional community. And so, you know, and that should not stop anyone from building community around this way of caring. And so, I mean, I have so much excitement and ideas, but just want to name one of how to like increase support, dynamicism, capacity in our respective areas. Like host a dinner party, like have people over for tea, do a picnic, and just invite people to talk about like what they want. Who knows, you know, like where the glue might be. And luckily for all of us who want to talk about death, it's trending right now. People want, like, they're leaning into the taboo, a lot of folks. So, you know, go with it. Like, harness that energy of people actually showing up for talking about it. So yeah, creating a little circle of 6, circle of 8, a study group, reading a book together, movie nights. There's so many good movies. Like, how can it just be social? Yep. Yeah. And you know, this is something we kind of get into in the death care directives class, as well as the body tending as well, that we'll do probably in the late winter, is like what are the qualities of someone you might lean on? Doesn't have to be that intimate. There's someone on this call who I am in service to in their directives, and we are not the closest people, and that's okay. It's like, who do we trust for what? And then change it through time. What I like to say is, oh, yeah, finish your document today, and then just change it next week if you need to change something. But don't wait until you're crystal clear, because that's what most of us are doing. And I want to call BS on that tactic. I want to say that death phobia is embedded in that strategy of procrastination. It's what's driving it. And so, like, the way to test that is to commit to getting it done and let go of the perfection and the need to know all the answers. Yeah. Because again, it can happen at any moment, and it's just probably by the grace of God that it hasn't happened to us on this call yet. Not our time. Yeah. Well, we have a few minutes. I want to just, yeah, I want to open up for any burning last share or question, and then I have some closing thoughts, and then we'll all wrap up with all of our voices. Any last? Okay. Well, you all have done a lot of listening. I am so grateful. Thank you. I'm truly, truly, truly honored to be able to speak to what lights me up, and it feeds me to hear what you're coming, like why you chose to come, and the stories you're holding, and the roles that you have in your respective families and communities. So thanks for sharing those as well. Yeah, I want to honor the vulnerability of showing up for this. You could be anywhere right now, and you're here. And yeah, there's going to be a follow-up email that we'll send today, I think, maybe tomorrow. But and it'll have the recording. It will also have some resources for you. And we ask for your feedback. And in that is an evaluation, what works, what didn't work, And if you're willing to share your words of how this impacted you, that would be wonderful. Because even though I've been in service to death and we've been in service to death for over a decade, we're just now coming out and actually doing more formal offerings and education around it from our learning. So it would be a gift to us, truly, like if we had your words for others to know that this is maybe worth their time and that it would be truly supportive if it is. So thank you for considering that. And at the end of that eval, if after you hit submit, there's a link to some resources I've put together that are podcasts, books, films, and websites for you to geek out on. And yeah, there's just so many. I'm so grateful for all those who have written books and produced things, because I'm just here to amplify it. And for those who are wanting more togetherness, more touch points, more guidance, there's a couple things coming up. One, we've got this directives class we keep referencing. We're going to do two versions of it. One's in person for 2 days in December and January at Earth Haven, if you want to make your way out here. And then the second one is 4 Sundays for 2 hours in January and February online. So just trying to meet people where they are in their mobility and schedules. And then we're also going to be offering the death care midwifery, the body tending class, at the very least this winter, and then perhaps again later in the year, or it might be in the following year. I'm unclear the frequency of that one yet. And then we've got online rituals. We've been doing them seasonally, and it's just really to help us to be together with the seasons within us and outside of us, and to make that alignment and to not feel the disconnection amidst all of this beauty and that's available to us. So that the winter one is called Storied, and it's on the winter solstice with my friend Siobhan, who's an amazing storyteller, if you're able to make that. And they're all by donation. And lastly, I'll say that we're going to do a live cohort of the recipes for remembering how to belong, which is that newsletter e-course that you have access to right now on the Soil website, which is a self-facilitated, self-paced practice guide. And we're going to make that available with weekly touch-ins in January with Chloe and I. She's the co-creator of that. So just to acknowledge that, like, there are so many resources online, better and more than I can ever contribute to. And I'm just really excited to be with people and journeying together and learning and apprenticing to life through death together. So if that serves you for accountability or inspiration or support, then there's some things coming up. And just blessings on your respective communities, and may the seeds that you all just harvested today get planted wherever you are with who you're with. Thank you so much for listening to all that. And I just invite us to unmute ourselves and just seed into the space together one word of a gratitude or how you are, just to check ourselves out. Yeah.
So nourished and so connecting. Thank you. Thank you.
Very connected. Yeah.
Full of
Grateful.
grace here. Grateful, full of grace. And Siobhan was a dear, dear friend when I lived in New Mexico, 2002, 2003, 2005. So it would be wonderful if I could just be around.
Great.
I feel very good. I just really learned a lot today, and it's just really good.
I
I feel so enriched.
Enriched and inspired. Aviana?
Contemplative and connected.
Thank you all. Blessings on your evening or day, wherever you are. and I hope we meet again. And I'm available, so please feel free to reach out if you have my email or via the soil website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.